Part 2 painted a vivid picture of Juliane's grueling struggle in the jungle, every step a battle against injuries and the harsh elements. Her knowledge of the rainforest and determination kept her moving forward, even as hope seemed to fade, until she spotted a boat. In Part 3, Juliane is alone in the unforgiving jungle. At first, she thinks she's hallucinating, but it remains solid and real. Rubbing her eyes, she looks again. It's still there. Could this be her salvation, or just another trick of the jungle? With faint hope, she musters the strength to investigate. The promise of rescue tantalizingly close, yet still she's uncertain. She reaches out to touch it, and she breathes a ragged sigh of relief. It is real. Then Juliane's heart raced as her eyes caught the outline of a beaten trail, barely visible, winding its way up the riverbank. She knew that the trail meant humans and possibly safety, but reaching the top was no small task. She swallowed her fear and began the slow, painful ascent, her pulse pounding in her ears. Weak from her ordeal, it takes her hours to cover the short distance. As she reaches the top, she peers over, and a few feet away is a simple shelter with a palm leaf roof and a floor made of pona palm bark. And inside, she finds a boat's outboard motor and a barrel of gasoline. Then, remembering the maggots in her wound, she decides to use the gasoline to remove them. Despite the excruciating pain, she manages to extract 30 maggots with a makeshift tool she finds. It's getting close to nightfall, and still with no one in sight, she makes her way to the sandy riverbank, and using a tarp she found in the hut for protection from the gnats, she falls into a deep sleep. On the 11th day since the crash, still alone, Juliane wonders if she should continue moving, knowing that these shelters are only used sporadically. She briefly considers taking the boat, but decides against it, thinking the owner might need it and doubting her ability to navigate in her weakened state. By midday, it's pouring rain, and she shelters in the tambo, occasionally trying to catch frogs without success. As twilight falls, she suddenly hears voices, and initially thinks she's imagining them. But then 3 men suddenly emerge from the forest, stopping in shock at the sight of her. Local lumberjacks returning to their boat find her, a ghostly figure with blood-red eyes covered in mud and leaves. They were shocked and initially frightened, believing her to be a water spirit from local lore. Once they understood what she said in Spanish, they were even more astounded that she had survived the crash that they had heard so much about. They helped treat her wounds as best they could and remove another 50 maggots from her arm. That night, they all stayed in the tambo and started the long trek by boat the next morning. The journey was slow, and each mile revealed more of the perilous environment Juliane had somehow survived. Each hour seemed to stretch endlessly as they made their way through a seemingly never-ending landscape of thick vegetation and swampy rivers. After 7 hours, the boat reached a small village, a remote outpost on the fringes of the jungle. From there, Juliane was able to get medical attention for her injuries. The villagers arranged for her to be flown to a hospital in Koepcke, where she was reunited with her father. It was during this reunion that Juliane learned the heartbreaking truth. Her mother, Maria, had also survived the crash, but had died sometime afterward from her injuries. The knowledge that Maria had been so close, yet beyond help, weighed heavily on Juliane and her father. Hearing she was the sole survivor of the crash left her in a shocked state. How could this be? And why her? Adding to the grief, she would later learn about the troubling details that deepened the pain. When her mother's body was finally recovered, her father noticed unusual signs that led him to suspect Maria might have been alive when she was found, raising haunting questions about the many delays by the rescue teams and what really happened. And when her body was transported to Germany for an autopsy and burial, the wrong remains were sent. Her father fought hard to learn the truth, but eventually he would give up. After her rescue, Juliane's relationship with her father became strained. Hans-Wilhelm, devastated by the loss of his wife, was deeply unsettled by Juliane's seemingly composed demeanor during an interview following the crash. Struggling with his grief, Hans ultimately decided to send Juliane to live with her aunt in Germany. There he believed she could focus on her future and heal away from the traumatic memories of the Amazon. Her life in Peru had been rich with adventure and purpose. Growing up at the Penguana research station, she was surrounded by her parents' colleagues and friends, all part of a close-knit community of scientists. But in Germany, Juliane was determined to make a difference with the life she had been spared. She followed in her parents' footsteps, earning her PhD in biology. A few months into her studies, she battled hepatitis, likely from drinking the river water, but went on to make a full recovery. When Juliane and her father reconciled 2 years later, he encouraged her to study bats, who were at the time a relatively understudied species in the Amazon. Juliane would take her father's advice and specialize in bat ecology. Her research would go on to make significant contributions to the understanding of the role bats played in the Amazon's ecosystem. Her survival story also drew the attention of filmmaker Werner Herzog, who coincidentally had narrowly missed being on the same ill-fated flight. Herzog sought Juliane out, and in 1998 produced a documentary titled Wings of Hope, in which Juliane revisited the crash site with him. The experience, which Juliane described as kind of a therapy, allowed her to process her trauma in a new way. Herzog's personal connection to the crash, combined with Juliane's first-hand account, made the documentary a powerful tribute to both her survival and the lives lost in the tragedy. Today, living in Munich with her husband Eric Diller, Juliane works as a librarian at the Bavarian State Collection of Zoology. She is the director of the Penguana Research Station and continues her work as a biologist and conservationist. Her and her parents' dedication has left a significant mark, making it a crucial center for ecological and biological research even today. Over the years, her work underscored the importance of conserving the Amazon and understanding its critical role in our global ecosystem. She collaborates with various environmental groups advocating for sustainable practices to preserve the rainforest for future generations. Juliane cautions, as we regard the rainforest as nothing but a wilderness, a green hell, we're behaving like children, setting fire to a heap of money just because they don't know what the paper is worth. Juliane's unique experiences make her a sought-after speaker on survival, resilience, and environmental conservation. She has shared her story at numerous conferences and educational events, highlighting the urgency of environmental issues. When asked what she thinks enabled her to battle through those 11 days, she says, "Every challenge presents itself as completely new. Just like anyone else, it always costs me enormous strength to translate what I want into action." In her memoir, When I Fell from the Sky, she details her incredible survival, illustrating her deep connection with the Amazon. In her quieter moments, Juliane reflects on how her survival shaped her philosophy and worldview. She talks about the psychological and emotional aspects of survival, the loneliness, despair, and ultimately the hope that kept her going. She muses, "I never lost hope. I always thought, I can make it, I can survive this." She remembers the watch her mother gave her with the inscription of Psalm 91:11. This verse reads, "For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways." And the lumberjack who saved her, recounting his words when she thanked him years later, "Not I, but God saved you, Juliane. I only got to be his vessel." Juliane's life story is rich with lessons of endurance, resilience, and the transformative power of nature. It serves as a powerful reminder of our vulnerability and strength. If you feel inspired by Juliane's story and the incredible work being done to preserve the Amazon rainforest and the Penguana Research Station, feel free to contribute to help protect this vital ecosystem for future generations. So if you're inclined to donate, the links are provided in the description below. Every bit helps in ensuring that this remarkable piece of our planet continues to thrive. If you're enjoying this content, remember to like and subscribe, and be sure to hit the notification bell so you're the first to know when our next story is released. Thanks for watching.